Introduction to Philosophy, Lecture 11. It looks like we get back-to-back works of fiction this time, and the trend of Shakespearean influence continues with the devil himself. In this story, a group of 4 research crew members on Mars are woken up by an alarm indicating a problem. They discover that a stone has penetrated the protective shell of their base, causing a fire and preventing them from leaving. With no hope of outside rescue, they consider using a prototype teleporter called a keyhole to escape. David, a transporter technology enthusiast, explains how the keyhole works and how successful recent tests have been. But he also acknowledges the risks involved. He sets up the keyhole and contacts a researcher at a base on the moon for advice before the crew prepares to use it as their only chance for survival. One of the crew members, Jean, insists on staying behind because she doesn't believe transporter technology actually transports people. She sees it as more of a copy machine that destroys you on one end and replicates you on the other. Her crew tries to convince her that it is safe and that only the matter she is composed of will be destroyed, but her energy will be transported and rematerialized on the other side. So, she will still be herself, they argue, just composed of new matter. But citing religious beliefs, she continues to refuse, preferring to meet her fate in the flames on Mars. The first crew member is transported successfully and reassures the others that it was safe and painless. But what are we to think of this person who has just been dematerialized, transported, and rematerialized somewhere else with new matter? Do we think that his original mind, consciousness, or soul could actually be copied and transported digitally? Or was he killed in the process, and the new copy has the mistaken belief in his own psychological continuity? If he is just a copy, could he actually have a soul if the original did in fact die? These would be troubling metaphysical questions for prospective end users of this technology. We are also faced with the epistemological question: how can we know which is true? Is it a case of death and copy, or a legitimate transportation? The same concerns hold true for the other members who use the keyhole. The next crew member, due to a glitch, dematerialized and rematerialized in place, and had to be dematerialized again to attempt the transportation. It's not clear that how many times you're dematerialized and rematerialized, that it has any further implications for personal identity. The next crew member considers the possibility of another glitch occurring that could result in copying him twice. This possibility harkens back to Thomas Hobbes' version of the Theseus paradox, in which every part removed from the ship during the many years of renovation was set aside, and then, one day, after every part had been replaced, someone puts all the discarded parts together, and now we need to figure out which one is the actual ship of Theseus. However, this is yet a more complicated version, since it is complexified with the metaphysical and epistemological questions just listed. If we consider a double copy scenario, and the transporter actually transports the soul and psychological continuity, would there be 2 of the same person? Would they both somehow be experiencing each other's thoughts and perceptions despite being in separate bodies? Or could the mind actually be split and carry on with 2 unique individual lives while sharing an identical past leading up to the transportation? If the metaphysics of the transportation was death and copy, which copy has the right to assuming the life that they both think they have been living since birth? These questions of transportation and identity metaphysics also pose problems for the biological continuity approach, or BCA, to personal identity. Recall that, on the BCA, psychological states don't really matter for personal identity, and in using the transporter, there is a total disruption, however brief, in biological continuity. This level of complexity is not present in the Theseus paradox. If we apply the Theseus paradox in a new thought experiment using the London Bridge, this difficulty should become clear. The original London Bridge has been renovated, rebuilt, and redesigned multiple times in its long history. Once, to help pay for new improvements, the bridge was sold to an American and shipped brick by brick to Lake Havasu, along with the schematics for accurate reconstruction. Now, this doesn't seem problematic, since they're all the same bricks being put back together in the same order and same arrangement, so we can safely call it the London Bridge of Arizona. But this is disanalogous in a way to the transporter thought experiment, because the original matter is not being sent with the energy of the person, which may only be the digital schematics required for the person's reconstruction on the other side. To fix this analogy, we would have to say that the American only bought the schematics and the legal right to the name London Bridge to reconstruct the bridge using locally sourced materials. Now, in that situation, it seems clear that the new bridge is not the same bridge that was replaced in London, it's just an exact replica. Therefore, if this analogy holds, someone who endorses the BCA to personal identity would be committed to the conclusion that the person who entered the keyhole would not be identical to the person who arrived on the other side of the gate. So, it seems the only way surviving the transporter could be possible is if the psychological continuity approach, or PCA, to personal identity is correct. However, it is still only a possibility that hinges on the answers to those metaphysical questions we considered earlier. Is it a death and copy transporter? Or can the mind or soul actually be digitized in a way that has no disruption in psychological continuity? In the end, none of this seems promising for the PCA, since when the last crew member uses the keyhole, another glitch occurs, and 2 hours elapse between his dematerialization and his rematerialization, and he has no recollection of those 2 hours, indicating a disruption in psychological continuity.